Tim Pool did nothing wrong, unlike the Daily Beast that did everything wrong, and that's why the Daily Beast, of course, produced a hit piece. Now, weirdly enough, it's been a while since hit pieces have been a thing, hasn't it? Like, when was the last serious hit piece you've seen on anyone?
I feel like the pandemic kind of killed him.
Yeah, right? It definitely changed the direction in which the Eye of Sauron was looking. But now, of course, this seems to be dying down, so it's like across the landscape, who can we find? Tim Pool, And so Tim has become the subject of their latest attempts to ruin someone. Why? Because this person is successful, and they are, of course, angry about this. Now, before we go on, it's no secret that I'm friends with Tim. I think he's a really good guy. And I've got a particular standard for judging someone's character. And that's, would I trust this person with money? As in, if I had £1 million, I needed someone to look after for a month or something, and I needed to give it to someone, who could I reasonably expect to get that money back from? Tim Pool is someone I would trust with money. Yeah? If I lent him money or gave him money to look after whatever, I'd expect to get it back. And that's the kind of character I consider Tim to have. And I've known him for years now. And he's been consistent in his character, as far as I can see. I've spent a lot of time hanging out with him. I speak to him all the time. Good guy, really like him. And this really annoyed me because I'm in this as well. So I thought it'd be worth talking about. But let's talk about the framing first. How coward and phony Tim Pool became one of the biggest political YouTubers on the planet. So just to begin, right? Tim Pool isn't a coward, right?
Well, I just love the editorializing.
Well, yeah, I mean, you couldn't get more editorial. Tim Pool is not a coward, and I don't consider him to be a phony either. But what I find amazing about this framing is the idea that anyone on the left believes in courage and authenticity. They're such moral cowards. And the word phony, really, phony. Okay, let's not talk about the word phony when you're busy transitioning things from one category to another. You don't want to talk about authenticity, what is authentically the thing that it claims to be, because that makes the left look really silly. So it's a really strange appeal to, I guess what we'll call right-wing heroic values of courage and authenticity. These are not left-wing values. So it's amazing the way that this has to be framed. But you can tell what all of this is built on, right? Throughout the fall of 2020, the wildly successful YouTube pundit has spent countless hours hyping the blinkered legal strategies and half-baked fantasies about voter fraud animating the online right. Yeah, they're jealous of his success. That's what this all comes down to. They look at how well he's doing and they're so annoyed about it. Well, I'm sorry, I'm glad that he's doing well. Anyway, they accuse him of being a liar because he won't spread unsubstantiated rumors.
What?
Yeah, literally that. So what Paul kept from his younger audience, overwhelmingly male, decidedly right-leaning audience, is that he seemed to have a pretty good idea of what might happen. As if he's an oracle.
What are they talking about?
The January the 6th storming of the Capitol.
How would he know what's going to happen?
Well, that's a great question. Well, I mean, Tim had apparently heard rumors. They say, in a recorded conversation, Tim said, "Dude, I've had messages from people saying they've already got plans to rush DC as soon as November the 3rd goes chaotic." He said in early September. Minutes later, Paul added, "The right-wing militias, the Oath Keepers, the Three Percenters, and the Proud Boys and Trump supporters, they're going to rush full speed to DC. They're going to take the White House and do whatever they can and empower a military, apparently." But that
that's
didn't
not
happen.
what happened.
Yeah.
Also, people talk S all the time.
They do. And Tim Pool heard all this stuff and didn't just make videos blurting it all out for some reason. Because it was fake news. And I guess that he accurately identified that.
I don't get the attack. I don't even know what this isn't his character at all.
Yeah, exactly. This speaks well of his character, that he had heard all of these things and didn't merely blub them out and mislead his audience, because like we said, this didn't happen. So this speaks to Tim Pool's character as someone who is actually capable of separating rumors from truths. Sorry, Daily Beast. I know that's
what a phony.
Yeah, what a phony and a coward. He was keeping this from his audience, this thing that wasn't true. Anyway, contrary to the overall manner in which Pool portrays himself, he was not an intrepid field reporter who streamer who barreled into conflict zones with an unshakable desire to ferret out the real story. Well, I mean, there's lots of video evidence to suggest he was. Like, he was streaming it. But anyway, Pool was at times reluctant to leave the safety of his hotel room, and from people who spoke to the Daily Beast, he'd come across as uninterested in interviewing subjects or doing much research. During shoots, Pool's head was frequently buried in his phone, diligently tracking social media, only to blame his co-workers or equipment when he couldn't live up to his clippings. Sure, This isn't salty people who are leftists from previous organizations who are looking at the amount of money he makes and being like, wow, that could have been me. It's not that at all. Not at all. A coward and phony, a joke, staggeringly arrogant, totally full of S, not smart, and a bumbling doofus are a representative sample.
Are we just listing insults now? That's the article.
Literally listing insults from like Vice journalists.
Oh boy.
From the lefties in America. Literally, these are and they're not even named either. They're anonymous. So who knows? Who knows?
Hit pieces have really gone down in quality.
They really have. Like, this is actually embarrassingly bad. Like, if you're expecting anyone to believe that these are authentic statements, well, I've got some news for you. We'll get into a claim of what happened with me and him, dealing with some Atlantic journalists in a bit. But yeah, so, I mean, I guess, but I mean, like all of the, I interviewed loads of people of, I think it's Mr. Silverman, David Silverman, or no, Richard Silverman, I think it was authored this. I spoke to a bunch of his ex-work colleagues and they literally said exactly the same words. It was weird how that came out. I was surprised, but it's definitely true.
I love the chat here. They're like, yeah, this just in. Tim Pool is a smelly doo-doo and also kisses girls.
That's literally what they're saying. Like, so it's just so embarrassingly bad. So yeah, most did so on condition of anonymity, in some instances citing possible reprisals by Poole and harassment from his fans. You mean he would respond and you would look stupid on Twitter and lots of people would say, hang on, you're lying on Twitter. And so they've done it anonymously, so you can just trust the credentials of the Daily Beast reporter here. And don't worry about who said it, just accept it as true. But anyway, they continue. It has made Poole both exceedingly rich, to one of the most watched independent YouTube political pundits in the country. Over 3.3 million subscribers. That's split among like 3 different channels, so there's going to be a huge amount of overlap there, so it's not quite that big. But 1.5 billion views, and by all estimates, hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue per month. He earned $600,000 just in August 2020, and most of it came from YouTube, Poole claimed in the recorded conversation. And here's why they're doing it. They want YouTube to demonetize Tim Poole. That's what the aim is here. Did nothing wrong, apart from offended.
The money was successful.
Outshone a bunch of salty lefty journos.
It's such a weird complaint. I mean, you don't hear Nvidia complaining about like Apple should be banned from stores. Why? They earn more than me.
It gets even better because Tim is from a mixed race working class background, and you can imagine how the not mixed race, well-to-do education, university-educated types feel about that kind of success coming from one of the plebeians, right? Unlike his peers in conservative media, Poole wasn't boosted by the usual suspects. Neither the Koch brothers, nor the Mercer clan, or another deep-pocketed billionaire forked over seed money, and he didn't game Facebook's algorithms. Fox News has more or less ignored him, and as has the institutional Republican Party and its network of well-funded think tanks. So he's a self-made working-class man. Good for Tim Poole. Good for him.
It's not a dunk.
Yeah, you're not making him look bad. You're actually like, Godspeed, Mr. Poole. Business is booming, with a dozen employees on payroll since April, and a prominence made possible in no small part by YouTube promoting his work on its front page. I know for a fact, he said during a December 2020 live stream, the YouTube algorithm drives the majority of my content. Well, here's some breaking news for you. The YouTube algorithm drives the majority of all content on YouTube. Literally everyone's. You can look at any YouTube creator's algorithm, like metrics, and it will be something like 80 or 90% of views come from the recommended page on the front page.
But also YouTube creators adjust their content so it works well.
Yes. But
we've got him. But
literally almost everyone's views come from the YouTube algorithm, because people are on YouTube and YouTube is recommending videos for you to watch. It's not a shock in any way, shape or form. But anyway, summarize this as just boohoo. Why is the Beanie Man successful? Why doesn't YouTube do something about the bad Beanie Man who refuses to lie to his audience and is being really successful? Despite his continued insistence on being viewed as a centre-left truth-teller, Daily Beast reviewed hundreds of hours worth of Poole's commentaries. Well, if only they watched some of his videos. I've watched some of his videos too. It didn't come across as very far right to me, but what are you going to do? But anyway, so this is amazing, right? No matter which ginned-up atrocity is roiling the online right in a given day, Poole routinely will deem it as a crucial sign pointing towards a civilization crisis or an imminent civil war. Didn't you just complain that a mob of right-wingers stormed the Capitol? Like, wasn't that Tim Pool predicting that a mob of right-wingers was going to storm the Capitol. Doesn't that look something like a civilizational crisis or a civil war? I mean, again, you're not showing that he's wrong. Why do you think Biden fortified the Capitol after his staggeringly valid election win? Like, why would this happen? But anyway, as a matter of course, Poole depicts people and groups on the left as potential bomb-tossing radicals or authoritarian lunatics. I wonder why. It could be, I don't know, all of the courthouses they've bombed. Or it could have been, the obvious violence, the people that they shot in the street, maybe. I don't know. There might be a reason that he's portraying them this way. Cultural shifts or gestures towards social and racial justice will lead to chaos and gulag stop with victims of morality policing. Yeah.
It already kind of is in the UK. Like, we have people who go to jail for prison terms for hate speech.
Yeah. It's all actually happening. And so the Daily Beast are like, yeah, Tim Pool's pointing out what we're doing. Well, sorry. He says, they will never stop coming. They will take your job away. They will come for your parents, he said, talking about woke cultists. If you do something wrong, they'll fire your mother. They'll come to your house with fireworks and guns. Yes, they will. They will never stop coming. This is what the Daily Beast is trying to do now. They're trying to defund and deplatform Tim Pool. That's the purpose of this. So Tim Pool is once again right. I'll skip over a couple of more leftist complaints about him saying things and then being like, no, we don't like Tim Pool. Tim Pool smells.
Tim Pool's got cooties.
Yes, literally what this article is. Right, so these days, they're complaining, they think that they spoke to two people who worked for Occupy Wall Street, and they say that Pool was never aligned with the movement. So Tim Pool was never aligned with Occupy Wall Street now. I mean, that's just not true.
I mean,
now.
this rando said it.
Yeah. Timothy Fitzgerald and Tess Cohen, members of the General Assembly Organizational Hub for Occupy. So they're like, he was never anything to do with it. And his opinion is that Occupy was crooked. These people racist, the most racist people I've ever encountered in my life. Correct. If anyone forgets, Occupy Wall Street is where the concept of the progressive stack first came to public attention because they were operating progressive stacks, literally saying, if you're this kind of race, you can speak. If you're that kind of race, you can't speak. And so, unsurprisingly, Tim was like, wow, that seems really racist. And he's right. When asked about Pool's story, Fitzgerald replied, this sounds like total fabricated, overheard at the local coffee shop type anecdote, meant to launder the false notion that racial justice is zero-sum. We watched the videos of them doing it. Google the progressive stack. Look it up on YouTube, progressive stack Occupy. You will find the videos of them doing it. But I love this. Oh, that sounds like a totally fabricated story. Oh, yeah, and your ones don't. Your ones don't. Your anonymous stories don't sound like totally fabricated stories.
They're just insults.
Yeah, exactly. Here's a story that's definitely not totally fabricated, right? One female ex-vice staffer recalled a 2013 conversation with Poole in which he told her point blank, women are too emotional to be good journalists. Their feelings get in the way. Definitely true. Definitely true. Seemingly oblivious to the upper management and the exec's advice were to the fact that Tim Pool was a total hack, said one former long-time editorial staffer. That's pretty salty. Pretty damn salty. Tim Pool, of course, has insinuated that his colleagues were lazy and overpaid. Citing conversations he'd had with a couple of unnamed former Vice employees, Pool also said that going woke had led to its downturn, financial and otherwise. And I think Pool's probably correct there.
Do you know Vice employees are overpaid? No, they aren't. Let me check their articles about how to put a butt plug in. So what?
And here's the latest Vice article about what's like to drink semen cocktails. Yeah, they're definitely not being overpaid. Anyway. So in late 2014, Fusion sent Pool back to Ferguson. Like the Vice staffers before them, a former Fusion employee familiar with the shoot said interviewing people didn't seem to pique Pool's interest that much, particularly black people, with a capital B. So Tim Pool didn't want to interview black people, presumably because he's a racist. He would check his phone regularly, obsessed with social media metrics, like they aren't. Pool took it as a given his colleagues would do the work for him. Ah yes, that's what people think of when they think Tim Pool, someone who doesn't work very hard. He only puts up like a dozen videos a day. Doesn't work very hard though. Other people do the work for him, you see. Very much prima donna is how the Fusion employee described him. I've never seen any kind of prima donna behavior coming out of Tim. I've hung out with him in lots of social situations. He's always just been a regular nice guy to everyone that I've seen him interacting with. Total horse S. This is. He ditched fusion and digital media as a whole because they're utterly corrupt and feckless, not because of his own failings, according to him. How did his own failings allow him to become this multi-millionaire massive media tycoon if he's some lazy work-shy idiot? And if that's the case, doesn't that speak volumes about Vice, Fusion, and the Daily Beast? Yeah, okay, so this lazy, feckless idiot has actually dominated the metrics and we're getting trashed by him. How is this happening? It's just amazing. But anyway, he only now unshackled from his corporate masters could he tell the real truth, the whole truth, the things they don't want you to know. Ah, yes, we're simping for the big corporations now. Interestingly, Rory will have a dispatch up on lotus.com later on about how the New York Times deliberately and consciously told their staff not to investigate the origins of COVID from the Wuhan lab.
But there's nothing they're going to keep from you.
Nothing they're going to keep from you. But again, we get back to why YouTube should deplatform him, right? As a member of YouTube's partner program, Poole was handsomely rewarded. In August 2020, he raked in $600,000. Yeah, so they want to unpartner him, is what they're saying. And the problem they have is that he's easily surpassed better-known right-wing yackers. That's the neutral, objective language that we're going to use to describe these people. Like Dennis Prager, Dan Bongino, and Ben Shapiro. So then we get to the part where I come in, and I find this very interesting. Poole was in Berkeley, California in 2017 for Free Speech Week, an ultimately cancelled 4-day event organised by Milo Yiannopoulos. Daniel Lombroso.
How was it cancelled?
Yeah, great question.
Come on, just skipping over that, are we? Like, they attacked the building, set multiple fires, and then tried to storm their way in to kill Milo.
Yes.
There was no other reason to be engaging in such violence other than death.
Yes.
Which is why he had to have armed guards, and then he had to be evacuated.
Yes. But they don't leave that in because they don't want you to know that.
It's just cancelled. He got bored. He just had a hair appointment. He was out.
Yeah. So Daniel Lombroso, the director of White Noise, a 2020 documentary featuring white nationalists like Richard Spencer, was in town doing preliminary research. At an Airbnb rented by a handful of right-wing figures, Lombroso drew the ire of Poole and Benjamin. And this is because you should never trust a serpent. And I'm very, very glad that Tim Poole was there. Now, I met Daniel Lombroso. I didn't know who he was, obviously. But him and the chap with him were introduced to me as journalists for The Atlantic. And so I was just sat opposite. And there was Martin Sellner and Brittany Pettibone there as well. And I didn't really know who they were at the time. But I knew that Martin Sellner was a white nationalist or something like that. So, not my kind of guy. And I sat down and Daniel Lombroso introduced himself. I was like, he's like, I'm a Jew. Yeah, that was my response. I was like, okay.
That's all right, mate. I don't care.
Yeah. Well, that's literally, I said, I don't care. Why would you bring that up? And in retrospect, obviously, I think he assumed that I was a white nationalist or something like that. But obviously I'm not. So I was just like, okay. It's a weird way to introduce yourself.
I was just thinking of all the things you could have said in response. Just imagine if you went Me Too or something.
Yeah. Well, it was just so weird.
What are you meant to say to that?
Well, I didn't know. I was just like, okay. But the thing is, as well, we had a conversation and I was sat there going, look, right, you're reporting the way you're framing things, the deliberate and conscious focus on race is creating and validating people like Martin Sellner. And I literally pointed, it's creating people like him. He can only arrange the framing of his conversations because of the framing you have created. And this guy didn't really believe it. He was like, oh, no, we're not doing anything particularly ridiculous. And so I got an article up that it was very, very recently. This had come up from The Atlantic, again, the publication he was from. And he didn't believe that this existed. And so I had to get up on my phone and show him that The Atlantic had recently published an article about a solar eclipse that happened across America in 2017 that was racist. A racist solar eclipse. Just to give you a couple of quotes from this, on August 21st, 2017, a total solar eclipse will arrive mid-morning on the coast of Oregon. The moon's shadow will be 70 miles wide and it will race across the country faster than the speed of sound. Blah, blah, blah. And on the path, along most of its path, there live almost no black people.
Do they think the sun god made that happen?
Well, they actually do say, well, we don't think we can ascribe this to unconscious bias from the sun. Well, I mean, literally.
But the moon, he's suspect.
Literally. Presumably, this is not explained by the implicit bias of the solar system. Presumably.
Presumably.
Who can know, right? And it ends with
I mean,
this.
the shaman's got something to say about it, so we'll leave presumably.
It ends with this. The Great American Eclipse illuminates or darkens a land still segregated, a land still in search of equality, a land of people still trying to dominate each other. But perhaps the strange path of the eclipse suggests a need for reorganization. Really.
Christ.
The eclipse is demanding the reorganization of the United States. So this is ridiculous, right? And so going back to the article, I showed him this, and he was like, him and his friend were just like, oh my god, this is insane. And they were laughing at it, being like, okay, well, we didn't know about this, we don't support this sort of stuff. And it's like, okay, well, you do. That's the point. You do support
where you
this
work,
stuff.
mate.
It's where you work. Yeah, exactly. You produce this kind of racist nonsense. Anyway, so afterwards we were drinking, and they were there, and they were filming stuff, but right, they couldn't publish anything without us signing a release form. Now, I was a bit drunk and I didn't really think about it, and they'd obviously been very tepid with the way that they were acting. They were very like, so they people you can't trust, being lefty journos, were acting in a way that lefty journos do when they are around their opposition. Now, I didn't really, in 2017, I was a lot more naive, right? I assumed that there were still some good faith people on the left, and these people hadn't acted terribly, so I didn't naturally assume they were bad people. Of course, on retrospect, anyone working for a left-wing publication should be treated as suspect. And so I was really glad that Tim Pool was there, because Tim knew about these kinds of people. And so when they produced like a release form so they could use the footage, Tim was like, don't sign that, that's an overbearing contract. He had to read through it. It was like, don't sign it, you'll regret it later. Thank God I didn't sign it on his advice. Because otherwise I would probably sign it. I had a few drinks, think, what's the worst can happen? I would have signed it. But no, Tim did that, and so they can't use the footage to, make us sound bad, right? And so we're given Lombroso's description of this, right? The two of them were a nightmare, he told the Daily Beast. Their behavior was really vicious, both repeatedly calling him fake news and evil because he worked for a mainstream news outlet.
What's wrong with that?
That's based, yeah. How's that wrong? I mean, I doubt I would have used the word evil in 2017. I'd use it now.
Well, you were lame back then, but
exactly. Well, I was naive. I was naive. I didn't realize the agenda these people were carrying with them, especially when they would repudiate it to my face when I would show them something from the Atlantic. That, we don't support that. It's like, yeah, but you do actually. And that's what I've learned in retrospect. So they deserve the term fake news, and they are evil, frankly. But when Lombroso took out the release forms, that's when Poole really lost his mind, the filmmaker said. He described Poole as loudly and vehemently arguing that he was not to be trusted, saying the release forms shouldn't be signed. Based. I mean, that's exactly right. And he was correct, wasn't he? I mean, Tim was just making good points, but he was vehemently arguing they shouldn't be signed because these journos can't be trusted. And that's because these journos can't be trusted, so don't sign their release forms. End of story. And honestly, I really thank God that Tim was there and made sure that I didn't sign anything. Thank God. But later that night, Lombroso recalled Benjamin stridently railed against media coverage of race and equality issues, with Poole concurring. The media was lying to the public and focusing on these issues in order to purposely start a race war in America, he said. They kept saying that. Yeah, because you are trying to start a race war. You are trying to incite non-white people against white people. It's just daily.
This is demonstrable.
I mean, how's that controversial?
You guys say it in your own text as well, in the critical race theory text, in which you want to raise racial consciousness, so then we can start understanding these concepts, and then you want unequal systems of racial law.
Specifically to change things, as in to start, and in their mind, they think...
Start a revolution.
Exactly. They're starting a revolution to try and destroy what they would describe as white power, but what everyone else would describe as the American Republic. So I think that's just demonstrable. I don't think there's any controversy there at all. They are trying to do that. And that's what's interesting as well. They're trying to frame our accusation against them as something we have done wrong. It's like, no, maybe you should stop producing race-baiting, inflammatory content that's designed to separate white people from black people. Unlike the critical race theorists, we're pro-integrationist. We think that people of all races should just be able to live side by side without any particular conflict. Is that too much to ask? The liberal dream? Is that too much? Well, yeah, it is for the Marxists, the critical race theorists. But anyway, so to conclude this, they say the names may change, but the paranoia remains the same. During the broadcast, Poole never said he disagreed with Goldman. When asked by Daily Beast if he too believes that people of colour were used by Democrats to cudgel against white males, Poole declined to say. Instead, he listed a few leftist Timcast guests who had made several claims I did not contradict and said he's pro-immigration. So, I mean, Tim, for some reason, was like, doesn't want to give a definite answer to that. But yeah, the left absolutely are wielding minorities as a cudgel against the white majority in America and in Britain and wherever else that they have their grubby little hands. That's demonstrably true. So I don't know why they think that would be like something they could say, oh, Tim's saying the left is using racial grievances to start conflict between races. Yeah, obviously. But how else would you frame
Why
it?
I'm not a leftist.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, they finish with this. I love Robert's finishing here. Those 2 hours of fact-free, at times bigoted bantering put a few thousand YouTube ad dollars in Tim Pool's pocket, and his audience got a free dose of white nationalism.
Come on.
So it's such an obvious grift. Robert, we know you're a grifter. We know you're just trying to hurt Tim Pool. Like, I don't think this is going to work because, like, he's arguing against racial conflict. And as I said to Daniel Lombroso all those years ago, you're the ones who create white nationalists by framing it in these terms. If you enjoyed this segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full broadcast live every weekday at 1 p.m. UK time on lotuseaters.com.